Hello everyone, this is video number 11, and this video I wanted to title Papercuts. So what kind of gave me this idea is I saw a YouTube video about having relationships with people, and a big topic that they had mentioned was how little things that happen to us in our friendships and our relationships and with our parents and with anyone that we could ever see, little things happen, and these little paper cuts go unaddressed and they build up over time. And kind of the logic was the death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? So a paper cut in and of itself, for example, getting in a fight, raising your voice, saying something that you didn't mean to, being mean, doing something to hurt others, but in like a very micro way, build up over time. And most of the time, people don't talk about them when they happen, right? I think I've had many times where it's been something will happen, I'll do something or someone else will do something, and the person expresses that they're upset about it, and you kind of you sort of apologize, but you kind of blow them off, right? You'd be like, yeah, I know you're sad or you're upset, but I'm sorry, whatever. I think I even did this a couple weeks ago. My roommate was like, hey, I didn't like that you said that. And I was kind of like, yeah, that's my bad. But you kind of blow it off, and maybe it still goes unaddressed, and maybe that's not the closure that someone wanted. And I think it's really important that in life, and something that I'm trying to work on getting better on, is when these paper cuts happen, make them apparent and really get the closure. And when you get the closure, be done with it, right? Because I think sometimes what happens in relationships more so than friendships is almost a pettiness of paper cuts, where it's like a bunch of these small things have happened, I haven't addressed them, then something really big happens, and then all of a sudden I'm being judged for the really big thing, and then the 30 other small things that I didn't even know were bad also happening. And I think when these things happen in our lives, you could say, I think some people would say, oh, these paper cuts happen, and every single paper cut is like a loss of love in a way, right? Like they're just adding to me not loving this person and me not wanting to be with them anymore. But I don't really think that's true, because I think when you truly love your partner, when you truly love your friends, you have a threshold in which you kind of let things go, right? You obviously don't want to get into relationships that are completely miserable, but at the same time, you have some level that you'll tolerate from people and not leave, right? And I think the levels would be, a stranger I probably won't tolerate anything from. A friend I'll probably tolerate, a decent amount from, depending on how long I've known them. A relationship you probably tolerate a lot from, and then obviously the final would be like your best friend or your marriage or something. You tolerate a lot from those people because you expect a lot from them, and they expect a lot from you, right? I think in the last video I mentioned I would call that like the love level, relationship, best friendship. Like there's some level of love there, and the love carries you as much as you carry it. So you tend to not give up on stuff like that. So I think when these things happen in life, I think it just can, it kind of just creates a gap and a divide. I don't think love is lost, but it just creates a gap that is like, you take a step back and you're like, whoa, maybe that crossed the line. Maybe I need to set a boundary with this person. And it sucks because I think, for me at least, I exist loudly as a person, right? I say what I want. I do what I want. I am who I am. There is no envelope that's different. The message is always the same, right? I'm not some code switcher. I give you what I am. So I hope that people would address that stuff with me, right? Because, I'm not the most empathetic guy in the world, but I will be empathetic when empathy is needed, right? Like if I truly messed up, I'll say I'm sorry, and I mean it. But I think sometimes we let these things kind of go overboard. And what I would equate this to is a theory called the zone beta paradox, or the zone beta paradox, if you will. And basically what this paradox says is when you're in a state, whether it's work or a relationship or friendship or with your parents, that state is bad, but it's not bad enough for you to leave. So it's kind of this comfort zone that is a bad comfort zone, right? I'm too comfortable to leave, but I'm very uncomfortable where I'm at because I don't like where I'm at, right? I don't like how you treat me. I don't like the things that you say to me and how you talk to me, but it's not so bad that I would leave, right? But what you would say in this paradox is, the reason that it's the paradox is, if it was just one thing worse, you would, any normal person would leave, right? And what kind of happens in this beta zone is our threshold for our threshold and wherewithal for dealing with bad things increases to the point where a normal person in the same position would have just left. It would have already left, right? But since you've experienced this kind of comfortable uncomfortness, which sounds really weird to say, but that's kind of what it is, right? You kind of like can't muster up the courage to leave. And I think when these paper cuts happen to us, and I would say especially in friendships when this happens, we kind of have a threshold for not being friends with these people anymore, because I think a relationship is very natural, right? If you don't like this person and at some point something bad enough happens for you to want to leave them, maybe they cheat on you, maybe they just haven't treated you right for months and months and months, and you've been unhappy, and you're just like, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to move on with my life. I think that's a very natural ending. But I think with friendships it's weird. At least for me, I always remember in college there were certain people who I really didn't like. Every time I saw them, it was draining. I always felt like they were in competition with me for no reason. And they were always trying to one-up me. They were always trying to like get some moral high ground over me and always be right against me. And it was like, being around you is very, very draining. And I've expressed how draining it is, and I don't want to see you. But I also am in college and I need friends, and you're friends with my friends. And maybe in the case where I lived with these people, it's like it's a very weird area to be in, because I would say at that point it's not even paper cuts anymore. It's full blown being stabbed repeatedly, but it's like, you're stuck in this paradoxical zone of like, well, is this just how it's supposed to be? Am I supposed to feel drained by these people? I think one of my friends mentioned to me the other day when I was talking to him about this. He said, do you think it's okay that, like, are some friendships just meant to be draining, right? That was kind of the point. And I really thought about that because, maybe there's some merit to that, right? Maybe there's some merit that some friendships just are naturally draining to people. But I would say, for me at least, not speaking for everyone else, because maybe some people have a better threshold for dealing with it, I would say for me, I just can't be in those relationships unless it's my partner that are super draining, right? Because I know myself, and I know that I need a large piece of what I give to others for myself, right? I need this big piece of the pie, if you will, for myself, because I think I'm kind of the person where, I'll be social, I'll be all these things, I'll be whatever you want me to be, but at some point I'm going to need me time, right? I'm going to need time to just do what I want, and time to be by myself or be with my partner, when I had one at least, and hopefully I'll get another one, hopefully, which I think I will, and I think I will soon. But yeah, that's just how I am, right? I just get very emotionally drained, mentally drained, cognitively tired, just out of it, right? So I need a big piece of the pie for myself, and I can't just give away myself repeatedly, right? And I think what ended up happening in college is, a lot of these people, it was like, I cannot wait to get rid of these people. And I think, going off of this paper cut idea, a quote that I heard by Roger Federer once was, he said, he was talking about his retirement, but I think this applies to a lot of different aspects in life. He said, if you feel, when you're leaving something big, whether it's a relationship, a sport, friendship, school, whatever, when you're leaving something big, if you have the feeling that I should have left this already, or I'm good that I'm leaving this, it's okay that I'm leaving this, then it's probably too late and you should have left a long time ago. But if you have the feeling that, damn, I cannot believe that I'm leaving this, I feel like I have more to put into this, and you feel the sense of loss almost, right? Then it was probably okay for you to leave that thing, believe it or not, because I know it sucks to feel that yearning and to feel that loss, but it's probably okay. And I think that applies in those situations in college where it was like, I was in the position where I was like, God, I cannot wait to get rid of these people. These people have done too much. They've gone overboard. I just can't wait to get away from them, because I feel like every time I'm around them, it's always detrimental to me, and it's never not detrimental to me, right? It's never not like, can we just sit down and have a normal conversation and you not ask me about my plans for my life and who I'm going to marry and if I'm going to be with this person forever, blah, 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 blah. Like, there's just no need for that, in my opinion, right? And I think, switching gears here a little bit, I would say something that I learned from my past relationship is how important communication is, right? I would say both of us were super, super, super solid communicators, super good. I'm a very confrontational person. She was not a very confrontational person. But kind of what I morphed it into was like, look, if I'm doing something wrong, there's zero way for me to know that I'm doing something wrong most of the time. Sometimes you kind of know, like, okay, that was a little much. I crossed the line. I got some cue that this was not okay for me to do, and I shouldn't do that thing. But I'd say generally most of the time, the things we say and the things that we do, we don't really know how offensive they are to people unless those people tell us directly, like, hey, don't do that, right? I think it's hard to tell that about people, right? I don't know if I offended you by doing something or being how I am, because I'm just who I am, right? Because it, oddly enough, if you were to ask me, like, hey, why did you say this thing? I would have been like, I didn't even know that was something wrong to say to you, right? I don't know your life story. I don't know what's happened to you. I don't know that was a trigger, right? I have no idea. But if you talk to me about it, then I do know, and then I know not to do it. But you cannot judge me for what I did initially, but what I do after the fact, right? How I changed after the fact. And I think something that we had done very well is just communicating those things to each other, right? Communicating like, look, this thing pissed me off. This thing hurt me. I don't like that you did this. And I think that's how you can avoid paper cuts. Because I think what it does is it avoids unnecessary meltdowns. And keyword unnecessary, because I do think meltdowns are necessary. I do think fighting sometimes is necessary. I do think raw, passionate emotion is necessary, right? It's necessary when we're in a friendship and for when we're in a relationship to express that raw passion that I'm feeling for this person, right? That's what makes it real for me. Is like, show me the passion that you have for me. Show me the emotion that you have for me. Let it pour out of you. Let it bleed out of your soul. That's what I want. And I want you to feel that. And I want to feel the same way for you, right? And I want to be able to express that in such a way that lets you know how down I am for you. And it lets me know how down you am for me. Because I think in order for things to really change sometimes, you do have to get into like a near breakup scenario, unfortunately, but that's how change happens. Because I think how relationships and friendships become solid is adversity. You go through things and you're like, wow, maybe we won't make it through this, but if we do, we're going to be a lot stronger on the other side, right? And if we do learn how to communicate better, and I do learn how this person's communication style and how I can bring up in a non-attacking way, because I think the important thing about bringing up those things too, and the reason why these paper cuts and things that happen to us are not brought up, is simply we don't know how to bring them up to each other without it seeming like, this thing that you did to me pissed me off, you suck, please don't do this anymore. That's an attacking way, right? I think a better way to approach it is, we need to work on this thing, right? Me and you need to work on communicating. We need to work on being nicer to each other. We need to work on not saying this to each other. Things like that, where they kind of humanize the problem and they make it a team problem, right? Because whether it's a friendship or a relationship, for me, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a teammate. That's really what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for anything fancy, anything special, but I'm looking for a teammate. So I think when you have that outlook, it's always a we thing, right? Because if I'm expecting you to change, I need to change as well. So it needs to be we. So I think bringing these things up to our loved ones needs to say, we need to do this better. We need to figure out how we can do this, and we need to put up some plan in which we're going to do it. And I think that's something that is really important to do, truthfully. And yeah, I can't really think of much else that I have to say on the topic, but I think, this video had a lot to do with communication, right? Because I think communication is super important, and I'm hoping that there's a certain person that I want to ask out soon, and I'm hoping that they would be a good communicator. And I would say she has the specific personality of the person that I would want, right? A very happy individual, a very kind individual, a very opposite individual from me, I would say. Not saying I'm not happy, not kind, but I can also be very unhappy and unkind. Sometimes often and sometimes not often. And I think, I would say people have specific archetypes about them, right? And if I could relate these archetypes to seasons, there are people like me who I would say are winter or fall, right? And I would say there are other people who are spring and summer. And I think what's impactful about that analogy is winter isn't winter if it's not juxtaposed to summer, right? So I think it's important to have that opposite person, because you're almost nothing without that side of life, right? And I don't know much about this person, and I don't know, even if they're with someone or they're not with someone. I have no idea. I all I did was give them my number, and I said, text me if you want to. And if they do, they do, and if they don't, then they don't. And that's fine. That's okay. It doesn't have to be a rushed thing whatsoever. But, I think I've put a lot of work in over the last 3 months. I think I've put a lot of work in over the last 9 months to better myself, better my goals. I think all the things back to video number 1 I've been doing. I've been making more videos. I've been doing well in school. I've been getting crazy lean in the diet. I've been making so many friends and doing all these things, and existing loudly, loving loudly, feeling loudly, being passionate about the things that I like. And I think I'm doing very well. I think I'm doing very well. So I think it's time to find a partner. And I think it's time to just keep doing me, right? Because I think, I'm not going to beg for someone to be with me. And, it's this whole idea of like, I chase or I attract, I don't chase. And I think that's important, because that's kind of what I want, right? Excuse me. I don't want the chase, right? That's something I had to do in college, and it was not a enjoyable experience. Because I feel like making someone chase is not living loudly, not existing loudly, and that is something that I want, that I value. So hopefully that will happen. So that is going to conclude the video. Today is Sunday, good Lord, Sunday, March 9th. It is currently nighttime. Just another caveat is Sword Point opened up. Daylight savings time was today, and I got to play for 5 hours. It was super sunny. If you can't tell, I'm very sunburnt, but I find it crazy to think how much a place, a setting, a group of people, and the sun can really affect someone's mood, right? I think I was the happiest today that I've been in 5-6 months. So it's interesting to see that everything kind of does fall into place. And as long as you try, and you try to get better, and you try to put yourself out there, you will eventually be rewarded with what you want. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. So yeah, that will conclude the video. I hope to see you in the next. I think this is video number 11, which is awesome because we're now into double digits. And yeah, maybe I'll get to video number 100 one day.